Welcome back to the 10th anniversary season of Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and every prediction I made for this episode was incorrect. And I lost my winner pick.
Yes, you did,
My
unfortunately.
Thanksgiving podcast is my co host, Jessica Lewis, who would never rub it in that my winner pick is out while hers is still in.
I mean, I of course would not rub it in. It's not like I would put it under my name or anything for this podcast to
Oh
remind
my gosh,
people.
I did not see that.
I was like, is he going to notice? Is he going to
No,
see?
the answer is no. It has been, a whirlwind weekend, and both of us just got back from different length trips, and
Yes,
so yeah, it's
I'm
I
very
did not
busy.
notice that.
But yes, my winner pick is still in the game. So thank you, Sophie. Blue Sophie for that.
Yes,
I
yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll be talking a lot more about yellow Sophie than blue Sophie for the rest of this podcast.
Yes, we
So,
will. Yes, we will.
um,
But I promise I won't gloat too much because
mhm.
we all know how terrible I am at my winner picks. But the fact that your winner pick went out before mine, that hasn't happened in a very, very long time, I will say. So I have to enjoy that just a smidge, just a little
All right, I'll give you that.
bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, clearly things did not happen as I thought they would, but hey, predictions are just the side dish for this podcast, like the
Mm-hmm.
rolls at Thanksgiving. The
Oh, but those
real
are often the best. But
uh,
the predictions are not.
yeah, the rolls just take up space in your stomach, because the real turkey and stuffing, uh, that is us figuring out what went wrong, which, of
Mm-hmm.
course, we'll do by following our usual path and comparing Jawan's game to a set of guiding rules for winning I originally wrote way back after season one and have been
Mm-hmm.
updating ever since. And we will do that using all of the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. Though in this case, when I say interviews,
Mm.
it's only the older ones because every year at Thanksgiving, the interviews get pushed back to after even our delayed recording time because I guess
Yes.
those CBS people want to take off Friday or something. I don't know.
Isn't that
Rob
crazy?
Rob was out there recording podcasts on Thursday, a couple of them on Friday. RHAP does not sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know, we won't get Jawan's fully into his head on what he and
Sure.
Sage were thinking on the past two votes. I believe that we can pretty well determine it from some of the things said in this episode,
Mm.
but maybe he'll have different viewpoints on it that they were like, well, we really did it for this reason. And yeah, we'll look at that when it comes out, and we'll evaluate and discuss as needed next week. But
Yes.
in
Yes.
any case, the newest published version of the rules can be found at robhasawebsite.com/yxlost feed, where you click on the link bubble for the survivor rules. Now, before we address how Jawan did in terms of the rules, we always have some other things to discuss.
Mm.
And I want to start with Rizzo because I did not fully understand how divisive he was in the fan base until this episode.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah, some people really, really hate the way he's acting, and
Mm-hmm.
some really, really love it. I personally, as I would say usually happens in these situations, I'm not at either end of the spectrum. I'm amused
Mm.
by him. I also think he's playing well, though probably not as well in some ways as he believes he has been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in part because he and his allies have caught some lucky breaks, including some we'll discuss later. So, where do you stand on the Riz God of it all?
So he's fascinating to me in a few respects. He came in wanting to play a very in your face game, which is the Riz God component, right? He was
Hmm.
very clear about that in his pregame interviews that he had this persona, but he said he wouldn't necessarily say that to the other players. The Riz God would
Right.
be his confessionals, right? So I can appreciate him wanting to have a persona. However, I don't. like the idea that someone is necessarily playing this game because they want to make themselves known on television as opposed to wanting to win the game. And that's where I struggle just a bit with him, because I do think he wants to win,
Yeah.
because he is expressing that. But at the same time, it's a little showboaty, and there's some things that he's doing that I'm like, this is just not necessary, because it isn't about entertainment as much as CBS wants to entertain us. The players should be playing the game, because what can end up happening, in my humble opinion, is you can rub other players the wrong way, which is what I think about in terms of the game itself. You don't want to be sitting in final
Right.
tribal and having people upset or frustrated with you because of how you were acting during the game and the components of the game that they saw you doing those things. So he's not saving that Riz God persona for confessionals alone. He is now interjecting into his game. And I could see that not boding well for him in front of a final tribal council if that's where he's sitting.
Yeah, I mean, some people, including a couple of our previous guests, I think, I know Dr. Jeremy Faust has mentioned it. I think Sam may have mentioned it too. Compare him a bit to Tony. And, Tony
Mm-hmm.
pulled it off. So I'm not saying Rizgod is Tony. I'm just
Right.
saying some have compared him to that. And I, I do think he's been keeping most of the bragging side of his personality to confessionals, which is what we advise. I mean, just take a look at the
Mm-hmm.
poster for Rule 5, and you
Right.
see Boston Rob hamming it up to the camera, which is what Rizzo is basically doing. He's he's super nice in person most of the time, and his real self in confessionals. But I mean, yes, I do think he's playing things up a bit as a character.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather he do it there than in the game. And he also came in that way. He proclaimed himself Riz God before he even stepped foot on the
Sure.
beach. I think
Absolutely.
I think he's having fun, and I also think he's playing to win. But like you said, some of that confessional personality did make it into the open this week when he played the
Mm-hmm.
fake idol. But he even said at the start of Tribal Council that he was there to showcase his game. So I yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what that was at Tribal Council. I think it was to help show that he's doing things. And one question that has been under debate is whether Rizzo was trying to get a read on people with his fake idol or if he was just grandstanding. I'm not really sure. I
Mm.
I don't know that we'll ever actually know the full answer because Stephen mentioned on No Else, he may well say in interviews later it was all part of his strategy, even if that wasn't part of his original intent. But
Mm.
personally, I do think that was why he did it, to get a read, make sure he didn't need to play the real one, make sure everything was going according to plan, and also as some that's a hard word to say, showmanship to keep the jury's eyes on him as the primary mover and shaker, even when he wasn't really the primary mover and shaker this week.
So you think that the playing of the fake idol was it was a ruse in order to see the response from those who
Yes.
were there as to whether or not he needs to play the real idol.
Yes.
But what's interesting about that is, like, Jawan told him to just play the real one, right? So like people were shocked that he was playing a fake one, and there was some response of, dude, just play the real one. What are you doing? So it's interesting that maybe he felt a particular way about those that were responding like that, that it wasn't a true concern. But there was some rather shocked individuals sitting there who did advise him to play the real one, and he
Yeah.
didn't.
I mean, but he was being advised that by Jawan, who he knew had turned on him.
Sure,
So there
sure.
was no way he was going to listen to Jawan.
Right. Was there
And
anyone else though that was pushing him to play the real one at that point? I know that there was like audible like
I
responses to
think it
it.
was mostly Jawan telling him
Mm,
that.
all right.
Uh, so what Jawan should have said was play the real idol on me. He just didn't know that, which wasn't going to
Well,
happen anyway. But
no, that would never have happened considering he voted for Jawan.
yes, yes. So yeah, that's where I stand. That it was a combination of things, and
Mm,
like so many other things, like I said, I fall somewhere in the middle. I am not a Rizzo stan.
mhm.
I am pretty much not an anybody stan because by
Right.
definition, a stan means you ignore all their bad points and only
Mm,
look at their good points.
mhm.
But nor do I dislike what he was doing in particular. I find it mostly amusing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm
So
I'm there with you. I can fall in the middle as well with
yeah.
all of that. Mhm.
Now his tight ally, Savannah, also put on her own show, though I don't think it was caught by the jury. As Jawan was talking about the person he was going to blindside, which she knew was her,
Mm,
she was making faces as she looked at him, and that camera got it perfectly.
mhm. Yeah.
Props to the camera crew and the editing. They did a great job of capturing that. And then when the votes were coming out directed at her, she asked Jawan if he did this, pretending that she was shocked and that thought that she was getting blindsided, even though
Mhm.
she knew full well he was going. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know, like if I were him, I don't know that I'd appreciate that. In the jury, if she's in final three, but maybe he respects the move and didn't quite catch everything that was happening there because of just the shock of it all. And he did
Yeah.
applaud them and give them hugs at the
Mhm.
end after all.
Well, I feel like Jawan is going to be the type of person who's receptive to that because he is going to look at it as a game move. It's going to be a pat on his back, right? We're like, oh, they had to take me out and they had to jump through all of these crazy hoops in order to remove
Mhm.
me from the game. So, yes, I think that he would be someone who wouldn't be bothered by that. He would be, which is why he asked, who raise your hand if you did
Right,
that, because I think in his mind he wants to know who to give the credit for, because
right.
he thinks that he was like the top and that he was playing the best game, and so whoever took him out he wants to give credit to. So I could see him being that way.
I can see that. The part that I didn't like was her egging him on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Juwan, did you do this to me? And knowing full
Yeah.
well she was blindsiding him.
Right.
And then, kind of just that overall attitude. That was all unnecessary. It was
Well, and
funny, but
right,
I
but I'm
don't think I'd have
also
found it funny if I were Jawan.
sure, but I'm wondering, and I just had this epiphany as
Mhm.
as I'm sitting here,
Poof.
that right, that perhaps she was doing that because she wanted the jury to understand why Jawan was being voted for, that she had sussed it out, that she had figured out that he also had turned on her. And so this is why they ended up targeting Jawan. So perhaps she was doing the same thing where, like, hey, jury, look what I did. Like, I figured this out and I want to make it very clear that I knew what was going on, that Jawan was the one leading the charge against me. And so this is why we had to target Jawan. Because I do think that sometimes when people are voted out, this is why we have a podcast, right? Why they lost. And so sometimes people might be like, well, I don't understand why they targeted this person instead of that person. And so she perhaps wants the jury to know exactly and full well why they targeted Jawan, because he had actually turned on her.
That's certainly possible. I think, personally, I think it's just because she tends to be confrontational. We've seen that plenty of times.
Sure. I mean,
You
she's
know,
pretty much in your face when she's asking questions and putting
right.
people on the spot. So sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's handling the Rule 5 of it all nearly as well as Rizzo.
No,
Uh,
she's
you know,
not.
he's keeping it mostly in confessional. She's letting her full personality fly as she
Yes.
does things like grilling poor Christina. Now, Christina should have been ready for a simple question like, "Who are you voting for?" But
Sure.
uh, she knew Christina was lying to her. I just don't think that's the way to get jury votes potentially later, is by getting in her face and being like, okay, who are you voting for? To the point that
Right.
Christina felt like she needed to literally physically back away and say, give me a
Mm.
minute to recover from this.
Well, and I do think that there is much to be said about how she is being perceived, because there's been mention about the mean girl energy or the mean
Mm-hmm.
girl vibes. And I don't know to what extent that is actually having an impact on how they're playing the game with her. But again, if you are looking for jury votes, we've talked about this a lot. if there's a split between a couple of people, oftentimes the jury will vote for who they like more and if they feel better about that person. And so if there's any part of
And
Christina that's feeling a particular way about Savannah, if
yeah.
Savannah is sitting there in the final three, there might be an issue for Savannah actually getting her vote. So that's one of those components where I think Savannah is thinking, I'm approaching this game the way I approach my life and my job, which is great if it works. But if it's rubbing people the wrong way,
Mhm.
then it might cost you in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Christina was not a politician lying to her that she was interviewing for, a news program.
Right, right,
I mean, she was lying to her, but not,
right. Oh, yeah.
handle it a little
Yeah.
differently. Yeah,
Hmm.
the editors didn't drop all these Mean Girl references in there for no reason. It
Yeah,
is going to come back to bite her at some point, quite possibly in Final Tribal Council.
sure.
So,
I did really, when you want to talk about editing, I so appreciated the cut from Savannah to Sage when Savannah was talking about how she had Jawan and Sage and that they were actually like working together. And then
mhm.
they cut to Sage and she just was sitting there silent and went, no.
Yeah.
It's like it was because the music they had this like kind of like creepy music that was playing and there was just this little bit of a pause before she dropped the note. I like that was beautiful editing.
Yeah.
It was very classic. So thank you for that for the editing as well.
Yes.
When you were speaking about editing earlier, it was
Yeah,
very
and
nice.
I'll have something else about the editors later. People who watch my video about it already know, but I'll have something else. They did a very good job in this episode, I have to say.
Yeah,
Um,
I do appreciate the editing very much.
yeah. Now, do you have anything or anyone else you want to discuss before we move into the rules for Jawan?
No, I think we can certainly get to. Oh, I will mention one thing. I do love that there was an introduction to a new component to one of the challenges. Now, the fact that Jeff has to mention that this is a new thing you've never
Ah,
seen before, maybe, maybe we need to stop repeating things. Just saying.
you mean the
But
teeter tunnel?
yeah, which was awesome. I mean,
Yes.
that it was. I mean, I don't know
Well,
how people didn't crack their noggins when they were going down on that.
and that's the one thing that should have been designed differently. They
Yeah.
should not have had the support bar
Oh
right
yeah.
above their heads.
Oh yeah. I was like,
It
geez,
should have
someone's going to
been
injure themselves.
Yeah, it should have been off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
They got away with it this time, but if they
Yes.
redo it, maybe adjust that.
Maybe adjust that. Maybe put a
Yeah.
little something on the inside to protect their noggins. But I
Yeah.
did think it was amusing that he had to point out it was something we're interested
Yes.
in today.
Yeah. All right. Well, there
Yeah,
were, of
I'm
course,
good.
yeah, other things going on, and I'll have some of it, and already did on my TikTok and YouTube at David Bloomberg TV. But also, before we get to how Jawan did, we want to mention that the rules we just discussed or we just discussed, we're about to discuss, come in
That's right.
people think, wow, I just missed the whole podcast.
That was
Uh,
it. 23 minutes.
yeah, come in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form. Go to
Mhm.
robhasawebsite.com/yxlost feed, scroll down to the poster, click on it, order it, and give it as a gift to yourself or your favorite Survivor fan.
That's right. And I apologize to the individual who ordered one recently. I promise you it's going in the mail tomorrow.
Okay. Uh,
Holidays. Threw things off just a bit.
yes. So also you can scroll down and get the poster on a t-shirt and keep scrolling and get the the checklist on a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and grab all of those and you can just get all your holiday shopping done that way at
That's
Rob has
right. All of
yeah,
it.
yeah robhasawebsite.com/yxlost feed.
It's a great
Now,
idea.
when Jawan was saying goodbye to everyone after Jeff read the votes, he told Sage, we tried and we made the wrong decision. Now, it's true, they made the wrong decision. But was it the one he was talking about there? What decision or decisions should they have made and when? And which key
Mm-hmm.
player ensured his demise in the game? At RHAP, we know Survivor and we know why Jawan lost. Now, before I start with the rules, I do want to preface it by saying something I mentioned previously, but want to reemphasize. And that is that I like pretty much everyone left. And of course, like Jawan, my winner pick, quite a bit. But our job here is to talk about what players did right and wrong. And we don't
Mm,
go easy on someone just because we like them. So,
that's true.
everyone, I mean, it's not like we're going to beat them over the head with a hammer or something, but just remember that as we go through the rules. Uh, Now, first and foremost is, of course, to scheme and plot. And Jawan had a bit of a roller coaster here in Rule 1. Almost from the start, he was doing everything he could to strategize and help out the people he thought were his allies. And the problem was they weren't his allies.
Mm,
Nate, Rizzo, Savannah, and Shannon formed a core four and excluded him for reasons we'll get into in later rules.
mm-hmm.
But he believed he was right in there among them and continued believing that all the way until Sage eventually opened his eyes on the second swap tribe. Before that, even on the first swap tribe, he was convinced that if they went to tribal council again after Matt and Jason were voted out, Sophie would be next.
Mm.
But the adopted tribe member was actually in a better position than he was with his original tribe mates. All of this despite the fact that he worked so hard to make Matt and Jason both feel comfortable so they wouldn't play their shots in the dark. And despite him going so far as to rig the rock draw to ensure that Jason wouldn't get to go on a journey, he was working hard. He was just doing it for people who would have tossed him aside if the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, so I'm curious if he just wasn't able to read the room or if the people around him were just scheming and plotting better than he was, because he
Yeah.
certainly felt very comfortable. And we did see that other half in all of the confessionals talking about Jawan and how he would be the next to go home, and that there was some dislike of Jawan happening. And he just seemed blissfully unaware that any of those beliefs or thoughts existed. And I think that when you're playing the game, you usually get a sense from how people are. And I don't think he was getting that sense at all. So I don't
No.
know if it's a he didn't have the spidey sense thing happening, or if the people around him were just really good at keeping it under wraps.
I think probably a combination of both. I mean, we know that unlike we just talked about with Savannah, when it came to him, she did keep that hidden. You know, she even
Mm-hmm.
talked about that. Like and we saw some scenes early on of her being nice to his face, and then as soon as he left, her grumble, grumble, grumble. Uh, so, so and I think Rizzo was very close to him, and I will discuss that even more later when it came to some of their later decisions in the
Mm,
game. So yeah, I just think they did a good job of hiding it from him. And of course,
mm.
it's always a lot easier when you don't have to get to that vote. You don't have
Well,
to
and
get to that
that
critical
is
time.
very fair. Yes,
You
that
know,
is a very fair point, because when you're not going to tribal council, no one is really learning
right.
where those lines exist.
It's like being on a team. It's great to have team spirit and everything. And oh, we're gonna beat that other team, and we're gonna do a great job
Hmm.
until you and your pal are fighting for the same position on the team, and one of you is about to get cut or benched.
Right.
And then suddenly you realize, oh, we're a team, but we're not really fully a team.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It's I remember experiencing that with some fellow high school
Mm,
team
mhm.
parents, where
Yeah.
they were all for the team, except then they would complain to us when their son didn't get as much playing time without realizing that, well, if your son gets more playing time, that means one of our sons gets less playing time. So,
Right.
we're not
Yeah.
really on the same side here when it comes to that.
Right, and I do think that that's a fair analogy, because you do have to be a team for as long as you
Right.
need to be a team until you go to tribal council, and then you're
Yeah.
like, "Who do we not need on the team anymore?"
Right.
Jawan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then, of course, at the second merge, Tribe, as I mentioned, his eyes fully opened,
Mm,
and he and Sage became tight number ones. Though Sage had a confessional in which she said they were number one since almost day one, which is rather confusing because we saw none of that at the time. So I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
sure if she was exaggerating or maybe kind of, moving things around in her mind,
Mm,
or they just
mhm.
didn't show it to us. I don't know.
Right, right.
Uh, but in any case, the two of them and Steven formed the Bottoms Up Alliance and tossed Shannon's bottom up and out of the game, and then made a big story about her to convince everyone else that she had lost her mind, which, let's face it, was easily believable.
But
Uh,
also unnecessary.
I don't think so. I think they needed a
I think
reason.
no,
I think
I
they
think
need
it was okay, they needed a reason,
right.
yes. But I think that they could have essentially they were telling them what actually happened. So it's not like they were creating this ruse like, oh, we voted her out, but it could have just been more simple where it was like, yes, she did want to actually target other people who were, and they could have still utilized that same thing, but it just seemed like it was like overdone. Like it was a little too much. Like I feel like they still could have accomplished the same thing, but it seemed like a little too much, which made it a little sus.
I mean, to me, the details sold it, especially since they all knew she was a little out there. So,
Mm.
why not add on to that? And, whatever, it worked. And that, it got
It did. And
so,
but I was just at the time, I'm like, this feels like it's a little overkill. But I
yeah.
did truly appreciate them not coming out of the fort or whatever you want to call their
Mhm.
makeshift home when everyone showed up
Right.
for the
Yes.
merge, and they were like, "Do we need to go down there?
Yeah.
Wait, I
Now,
can hear them. This
yeah.
is terrible."
Yeah. Now, the story got him and Sage back into the good graces of their original tribal allies so they could turn around and blindside them by joining with the original Hina to vote out
Mm,
Nate. And I noted in the Why Nate Lost podcast that Nate thought it was logical for Jawan and Sage to stay with them because it guaranteed them final six. But I agreed with those two and disagreed with Nate because it did not make sense to go with a guaranteed six when you know there's a super tight four within that six.
yeah,
It
yeah.
made more
Hmm.
sense to go with an alliance of seven that had different factions you could work with or
Sure.
against.
Hmm. Yeah, that was great scheming and plotting.
Yes. Now, I should say at least that was the theory because what actually happened was much different because they were out schemed by Rizzo and Savannah or partially out schemed themselves to Rizzo and Savannah's advantage and ended up doing their bidding rather than playing their own game. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Jawan and Sage swung back to work with those two in voting out MC without forcing Rizzo to play his idol. And then
Yeah,
they did it again by deciding to vote out Alex because Rizzo helped convince them that Alex was a bigger threat, even though that was clearly not the case. As I said last week, Rizzo did a good job of shifting everyone to Alex, but I can't give him all the credit because I have to give others so much of the blame. And also, as we discussed last week, Alex said in confessional, who are Jawan and Sage going to believe? Are they going to believe me or are they going to believe Rizzo, someone who's desperate and at the bottom and scrambling to get to the top? It seemed like that should have been an easy answer. And yet we know what happened because Jawan became convinced that Alex was a bigger threat to his game than Rizzo was. Now, again, I'm sure he'll have more information about why he went that way for both the MC and Alex move in his interviews.
mm.
But as we sit here and record right now, we can't see inside his head to figure it out. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. And honestly, it may not make sense to me even after those interviews.
I think again though, what we have happening is this idea that Jawan had about himself. And I think Rizzo saw that. I really truly think Jawan thought he was the mastermind and that he was running the show and that he was playing the best game. You look at some of his confessionals and he's very high on himself and the game that he's playing, and he's really putting himself at the top and as the most threatening player. And perhaps Rizzo saw that and then leaned in on it, where it's this idea that, like, well, Jawan, like, you're playing such a great game, and you are, and this is why Alex is a threat to you, and this is why MC will be a threat to us. And it's like, it's those moments, and I think about, like, the final tribal council, when you want to try to earn someone's vote. What do? You build them up while they're sitting at the jury. Like, of course I had to vote you out because you would have beaten me if you were sitting here, right? Like, you have to
Right.
make that person feel better about themselves, because then they're going to be like, oh, look at me. I was so good. I would have beaten that person. So I'm going to vote for them because they know that I would have beaten them. And it's that kind of idea that I could see Rizzo sensing and realizing about Jawan. And it's this, I'm going to build him up, which is why maybe he never caught on to anything that happened at the beginning when they were actually wanting to target him, because they kept making him feel so good about himself and his game that it was easier for them to then convince him of things that we look at and go, my gosh, why would he ever have, like, gone along with what they were saying to him? But if he's feeling that good about himself, maybe that's why.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. If I had to put money on it as to the reasoning right now, I would say that he and Sage, and we may get more into this, that he and Sage believed they had time
Mm,
and that they
mm,
could swing, they could do the Will Wall pendulum,
yeah,
and swing back and forth, and that's my thinking on it. But we'll see what he has to say, and later what Sage
sure.
has to say. So now,
Great.
I mentioned that Jawan told Sage when saying goodbye, we tried and made the wrong decision. But no, the actual decision or the actual situation was they made the wrong decision last tribal council
Mm,
and the tribal council before that.
yes. Yes.
Even though Sophie said to Rizzo that Jawan could have just gotten Steven out and been safe this week, he both couldn't have and shouldn't have done that anyway. He couldn't have because of Christina's idol, and he shouldn't have because it doesn't do any good to keep knocking out your own soldiers, like I said last
Right,
week about
right, right.
Alex. Now,
Mhm.
of course, it was obviously too late to worry about losing more soldiers anyway. All it would have done, if Jawan had done what Sophie said, your Sophie said, would have been to extend his stay a couple weeks before they
Mhm.
knocked him out. It would have changed
Right.
the order. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he needed to do things much different 2 votes ago for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, so leading into this tribal council, Jawan felt like he was in a great position alongside Sage, like you've been saying, and as they seemed to be the decision makers. And at one point, he even said, all roads lead back to the two of them. But the problem is, those two didn't realize their actual position. And clearly, it was
Mhm.
not nearly as good as they thought. They kept wanting to vote out Savannah. She kept winning immunity. They said they wanted to vote out Rizzo or at least flush his idol, but then they didn't.
Mhm.
And then they found themselves in a situation that Sage described by saying, we are getting down to really critical numbers. If we don't break up this trio, we are screwed.
Mhm.
The problem was by the time they saw it as an issue, they were already screwed. It was too
Yeah.
late.
Yeah.
They had a chance to do it the previous two tribal councils, and they did.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Just put all your votes on Rizzo. Last vote. Last time.
Yeah.
Just do that. Just do that. It would have been fine. But no,
Yes.
they didn't.
No. Sage also said, I think it's really important that we take this shot while we have the chance. I've been saying this almost every tribal. Guys, I don't think we're going to get another shot. Now,
Mhm.
this is interesting to me because it suggests someone else was overruling what she wanted to do in
Yes.
taking the shot against the threesome. Who else would that be? Hmm,
Jawan.
seems that way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Sophie with an E played a part in it too, but I don't know that she would have necessarily listened as much as she did to Jawan. Plus, there was a scene this time where it looked like she was working hard to convince him that they
Mhm.
had to do it now. And why would she have to work hard to convince him of that unless he had been maybe the one pushing back previously?
Mhm.
And this takes us to something we all said quite a bit about last week, which is They did not realize how bad their situation was because they didn't know about the extra vote or the knowledge is power, or even that
Hmm.
Sophie with an E was going to stick with Rizzo and Savannah and Soph.
Right.
But even though they didn't know the details, again, as we discussed last week, they should have known something like that was possible.
Hmm.
This is Survivor, right?
Yeah.
The others, if you had said no, I would have been like, what? What are we talking about? Um, the others didn't even have to use all those game pieces like I predicted they would. I mean, even though Savannah used her extra vote, which they didn't know about, even Rizzo using his idol on Savannah would have had the same effect as that extra vote anyway.
Yeah.
And they knew about that idol. What they didn't
Right.
know was that Sophie with an E was going to spill every single bean.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that this really goes back to, and I hate to keep repeating myself, but I feel like he is just being outplayed by all of these other people who are convincing him of things that aren't true. And I think this is really going to be the first tribal council where you absolutely see that group. I mean, we've seen it, we've seen the three, but Jawan and Sage thought that they were controlling things. They thought that they were the ones making all of the decisions. Clearly, this is an eye opening moment for both of them because Jawan's going home and Sage is now realizing, yeah, I said it was going to be too late. And now it's too late because there are no more numbers for them to necessarily do this. Rizzo still has an idol that nobody's been able to flush because they can't figure out how to do that either. And so it really is just a matter of circles are being run around some of the other players. And I'm very curious. I would love to hear what Jawan was being told by Rizzo and the little sweet nothings that were being whispered to him because clearly it was having an effect. And the way that Jawan was approaching this game, I think, directly was impacted by all of those conversations that we just don't know the details of.
Yeah. And like I said, the Sophie with an E of it all. Uh,
Hmm.
they were not accounting for those relationships
Right.
and did not know where she stood. And that turned out to be the main issue. She stayed with the Rizzo crew and passed along all the information that the people on the Sage and Jawan side happily
Hmm.
gave to her,
Right.
allowing them to craft an almost impervious plan that
Hmm.
Jawan, Sage, Stephen, and Christina never saw coming.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I mean, we don't know yet why Sophie decided to go with the other side, but since it has more to do with her than Jawan, we'll get to our thoughts on that in Appendix A. What we do know is what happened and that Jawan and Sage were not taking into account this possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, well, we can move to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Unfortunately, Jawan has had issues with this rule pretty much all game. It started early in his original tribe, and one reason he was left out of the core alliance was, as those in that group said, he seemed overly strategic and was busted looking for idols. Then, as time went on, he gained a reputation for having loose lips. Indeed, MC told Rob that the reason they voted for Nate at the initial merged tribal council was they decided on Rizzo, but Jawan found out and they worried he would tell the other side. And then the same thing happened with Savannah, so they finally settled on Nate.
Mm.
Of course, there were other reasons to go with Nate, which we discussed at the time. But people wanting to switch the target just because you found out about it when you're supposed to be working with them, that's not a good sign for what they think of you.
Yeah, no, and this is why I really think that he was looking at it as I have relationships with everyone. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
telling me everything and I'm sharing information with other people. And he's not considering the fact that those people are having conversations with other people too. And so, certainly that whole situation with Sophie, I think really put her in a position where that solidified her decision there with what she was going to do and what she wanted to focus on as far as the group that she was going to work with, because she had this idea and presented it and then it all just came right back to her because yeah, he had loose lips, he was sharing the secrets that everyone, I'm sorry, seems to be continuously doing on this season.
Well,
Everyone is sharing everyone's secrets.
yeah, and that's the thing. He wasn't even the one that shared the secret about Christina's idol. I was sure it was going to be him, but Sage was the one who
Hmm.
told her.
Right.
Um, but prior to that, he added to his loose lips perception by telling people when MC let him know about Sophie's plan to throw a vote his way, even
Hmm.
though she told him in order to try to help him and she asked him not to tell other people.
Right.
If
Right.
if he had just turned on Sophie at that point, or better yet, taken out Rizzo like they should have, this vote against him would not have happened and he'd probably still be
Hmm.
in the game.
Sure. I agree.
Um, Now, at the beginning of the episode, this is the other editing moment I wanted to mention. Rizzo told us that Alex was visibly playing the middle and he wanted to be in the best position. So if he sees someone in a better position, he wants to get them out of the game. This was his explanation as to why the vote went that way. It turns out that was foreshadowing of what would happen. Now, you wouldn't know it by watching. Sometimes we can catch foreshadowing.
Mm.
But in this case, you have to rewatch and be like, ooh, this is a really cool scene now because of course, Jawan was basically playing the middle with Sage, and he arguably did have a better position than Rizzo, or at least would have if Sophie didn't spill the beans.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
and so this was a really another good editing choice by them to show us the scene of Rizzo saying, "This is the person I want to get out," and lo and behold, hey, look, they get out Jawan, who also
Yeah.
fits that bill. Um,
Right.
Given everything that we've seen, I just he like I said, loose lips sink ships. And
Mm.
even though it was Sage's loose lips that sunk this time, I think
Hmm.
he undid a lot of the welding in the ship with his.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing this game, you really have to choose those moments carefully with when you are going to share information and how much information you're going to share. Because one time might be all it takes, but if there's multiple times that they can associate back to you
Mhm.
where secrets are being shared, then certainly you are going to be more of a hindrance than a help to any plans moving forward. And they're not going to include you in those plans. Or, as you mentioned, they're going to have to change plans because you know about something.
Yeah.
And that is certainly not how you want to be playing the game of Survivor if you have to question those people that you're playing the game with and how much you can trust them. But I also thought it was fascinating too how I'm trying to remember if this was the commentary that he added to this, but where he decided that this person was lying to him and this person wasn't. And I just thought that that was very interesting. That I was like, how does he know that this one is lying and this one is not? And how it seemed to be a very like matter of fact moment for Jawan. And I just can't remember the context of it. But I
Mm.
just remember thinking to myself, well, that's interesting. That he would make that determination when he's been lying to people and saying things to certain people and sharing information. And so it just seems peculiar, I guess.
I mean, I think that's fairly common to reality shows. We see that on the
Mm,
Traders quite a bit.
mm-hmm.
Where someone will be, I am 100% certain that you are lying to me. And they were
Mm,
telling the truth the whole time. Or I am 100% sure that we are best buds and you have been
mm-hmm.
telling me the truth the whole time. And no, they're absolutely stabbing them in the back. So,
Right, right.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just bad reads.
Well, and that's what I think Jawan really was suffering from.
Yeah.
He couldn't read the room and was putting too much faith in what certain people were telling him as opposed to
Yeah.
really putting together all of the information that he had.
Yeah. All right. Well, the third rule tells players to be flexible. Now, we talked about Jawan playing the middle, of course. So, was that enough flexibility or did he need more?
Well, clearly it was a problem for him because look what ended up happening. The flip-flopper had to go home, right? He was in the middle. Rizzo didn't want him to be in the middle. So I have to respect his idea and his desire to do this because he wasn't locking himself into a particular idea or person or path. He was willing to shift back and forth. So in that regard, he did great as far as being flexible because he was open to various ideas. But it put him in a really bad spot because people saw he was very flexible and saw that he was willing to go back and forth. And that did not bode well for him.
Yeah, I mean, I I think I understand what Jawan was trying to do in playing the middle and trying to keep relationships, good relationships with both sides.
Hmm.
I do think, like you said, he overdid it and he misread his flexibility as we, just discussed in the first two rules.
Yeah. Hmm.
So the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. I think Jawan did well here because he repeatedly voted out people he liked because he felt it was good for his game, such as Nate and Alex. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
was wrong on Alex, but he at least he was doing it for a non-emotional reason, I guess. Um, uh, but on the flip side, even after he was blindsided, he wanted to know who did it so he could congratulate them. But
Yeah.
one question I have is how much his affinity for Rizzo uh, might have contributed to the decision to repeatedly not vote him out when he should have. It
Mm-hmm.
seemed like they were very friendly in the game. And this is another situation when the interviews may help clarify things a bit because it seems like if Savannah had been available to be voted out, that's what would have happened.
Mm.
But since she wasn't, they didn't go after Rizzo, even though it was clearly the play they should have made.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it would add some context as to why Jawan listened to Rizzo when it came to Alex, even though, again, he obviously should not have.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that he actually talked about in his pregame press was that his biggest struggle is that he really cares about people and he wants to be able to sleep at night if he cuts people. And so I am very curious if that was a component of his game. He did say that he was willing to vote people out that he liked and people that he was friendly with. And was that a problem with Rizzo? Was he unwilling to take that additional step with Rizzo because perhaps he thought that there would be some type of a relationship with Rizzo moving forward? Maybe they talked about getting to the final three together. And again, we just haven't seen that. We just
Right.
don't know that yet. So I'm very, again, still curious how those conversations will be provided or when they'll be provided.
Yeah. There was one other situation when Jawan's emotions got the best of him. Back in episode 1, he got really frustrated at himself because he couldn't start a fire, and he was visibly angry, even though
Mm-hmm.
he again angry at himself, not at anyone else, and even though he tried to walk away, and of course Savannah saw it and got worried about having him as an ally going forward. At the time, I poo-pooed this as being silly, like the editors were playing something up that was on nothing. But then it came up again later. So that one brief instance of not controlling his emotions may have helped put him on the outs in his original tribe. But really, I think Savannah had it out for him from the get-go anyway. And this was just one reason out of many. Much like she said, she wanted to vote out Matt, so she decided you had to be a sociopath to do
Mm-hmm.
financing at his level. I think she was already against Rizzo, I'm sorry, Jawan, and therefore she said, "Oh, I can't be his ally. He gets too emotional about starting a fire."
And he
That's my
took her bag to go get wood. How does that happen?
well. Let's talk about the fifth rule then, because it reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Now, I saw a mix of good and bad here. You just mentioned a bad, and so what did you think of him here?
Well, I think he thought he was doing a great job being friends with everybody and forming relationships with everybody. But and I said it earlier, he was blissfully unaware as to what was actually happening. You're using someone else's bag to collect wood. That's bad. You have very few things that are actually your own when you're out there playing this game. And to have someone take your bag and not only take your bag, but take your bag that has your clothes in it, all of your personal things, and they walk away with it and they start putting wood in it to carry it back.
Oh no,
Now,
I think I think it's kind of worse. I think he dumped out the bag. So
no,
to make room.
she was pulling out her clothes when because there was stuff all over her clothes too. So there
Oh,
was she had she had stuff in the bag.
I thought he dumped it, which made me think, how can you dump out someone's bag and not realize that's not your stuff?
I'm remembering seeing her, like, when they were taking wood out, she was pulling out, like, a shirt or something of hers, and I
Mm.
just remember thinking to myself, "How do you do that?" Because as someone who played the game, you were very aware of where your stuff is because, again, you have so few things, and for you to take someone else's bag, but then he took someone else's torch.
Well, I mean, he also took her water bottle, and then,
He
yeah, he
took her
took
water
Rizzo's
bottle, right? So
torch.
it's there seemed to be just this unawareness of like personal space and like other people's things, and so I think that he thought he was doing a great job, and I think he thought that he had all these relationships that were strong, which is why I think the Rizzo thing exists the way that it does. But what was really happening is people were getting annoyed with him or seeing these things that he was doing, and it was frustrating them because we're going to make Jawan feel a particular way, but we really want Jawan to go home because he's just getting under our skin and he's doing things that are frustrating us. So I think he thought he was doing very well, but I don't think other people necessarily thought the same.
See, I think you kept saying people. I think the correct word is person, because I think
Mm.
that I think that Savannah was the only one really mad at him.
Well, okay, and I will add
Yeah.
this then. So because here you have, if Savannah is the only one who's really mad at him,
Yeah.
she can start pushing this narrative,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Because she can
absolutely.
start saying, well, look, he took my water bottle, he took
Yeah.
my bag, he put wood in my bag. And so in this game, you're looking for any reason to target
Right.
someone. You're looking for any reason to go after someone. And Savannah has she's got a group, right? She has Rizzo, she has Sophie, Blue Sophie. And so she has like a little posse, right? That will support her in this idea. And they'll be like, yeah, we're with you, Savannah. We're not with Jawan. Jawan had Sage, but I don't feel like Jawan necessarily had the same type of support system that Savannah has. Savannah seems to have a much different type of support system than what we see happening with Jawan. And even with Sage in the confessional you've already mentioned, where she's like telling someone, you know, that like that we need to take Savannah
Right.
out, we need to break up this three, but I keep getting told no, or that I'm not, she's
Hmm.
essentially being told that they're not going to do that. Well, that's coming from Jawan. So you're losing people's support if you are thrusting your ideas upon them, your beliefs upon them, and acting like you are in control of certain things, as opposed to we're a group, we're a team, and we are going to actually work together on this. So I think he thought that he was really doing a great job, but I don't think that it was coming across the way that he necessarily thought it was.
Yeah, I had a totally different read on that. I think he was able to maintain good relationships socially on both sides, even when he kept flipping against people. You know, he turned on Shannon, but the bottoms up alliance convinced his original tribe mates, as we talked about,
Hmm.
that it was necessary, and they trusted him and Sage again. They
Sure.
fully trusted them again, which gave them the opportunity to blindside Nate. And then even after they blindsided Nate, Rizzo and Savannah were happy to work with Jawan to get MC voted out at the split tribal council. And then Rizzo and company worked with them to take out Alex without even Jawan telling Steven and Christina.
Hmm.
And then yet they continue to trust Jawan and Sage enough that a blind side of Savannah was in the offing until Sophie revealed the truth. And
Mm.
and when I say they, at that point, I mean Rizzo and Savannah, but also Stephen and Christina, who had just been left out of the last vote, trusted him enough to work together on that very plan. So
Right.
I, I,
And
I
I
think his
see.
social game, as far as getting people to want to work with him, was generally pretty good. I think the only
Mm.
one who didn't like him was Savannah, and that
Hmm.
other people voted him out for other reasons that we've been discussing.
Well, and I don't think that his social game was bad. I don't want it to come across that I thought his social game was bad. I think that Jawan was looked at differently. That Jawan was more of a number. This is a guy that we want to work with because he's a number. And this is a guy who's going to share information with us. And this is someone that we can make feel very comfortable. And so it was more of how other people were reacting to him and then his perception of these people reacting to him. Like, I think Juwan thought, I'm in with everyone and I'm on the
Yeah.
top, and like everyone's coming to me and I'm making the decisions, and it's all Sage and I are making all of the decisions, and it's all me. I'm doing this, right? Whereas I think other people were, and when I say people, it is Rizzo, Sophie, and Savannah, who are like, we have to work the numbers, and how
Hmm.
can we work the numbers, and who can we convince to work with us? Well, Jawan worked with us before. Sage worked with us before. So let's try to pull them back in so
Right.
we have the numbers. So I think it's this weird combination where he definitely thought that he was a people person and that he was very good at it. And I do think that he was. But I also think the others saw that in him and almost took advantage of it and utilized that in order to give themselves another vote, because now we've got Jawan, and Jawan's coming with Sage. So now that's
Right.
two instead of just one.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a component of that. I mean, in some of the votes that I mentioned, yeah, he was a number, but they still had to trust him not to flip back again.
Oh,
And
sure.
like I said, Christina and Steven welcomed them back with open arms. I mean,
Hmm.
Christina earlier felt so bad and loved him so much that she gave up her reward for him.
Yeah, that
Uh
was crazy.
yeah.
That's a good
So
point. That is a good point, because that food thing happened, and then there was something else that came up. I don't think it was something that we saw, but there was some discussion about, maybe it was Rizzo talking about how good it was that Jawan was going to be getting food. So that there does
right,
seem to
other
be a
people,
genuine,
yeah.
like, yes, that they did care about making sure he ate. So there's
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, I think he was good, like I said, in good with everyone from a social perspective,
Hmm.
except for Savannah, who definitely wanted him out for many reasons, that being among them.
I agree.
So, all right, well, we could go to the sixth rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. And since we've talked about Sophie with an E being the deciding factor here, let's begin with a quote from her. Jawan is a good player. He's extremely likable, and I don't think I want to sit at the end with him. And then, plus, when she voted, she said, "Today I realized what an incredible strategic threat you are in this game. Excuse me. I will never beat you in a final tribal." I have to admit, maybe that's why I coughed. That was a little hard to swallow because it was a bit of a head scratcher for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. As I've said, I really like Jawan. But what did he do to give this impression? Because it was not presented that way in the edit. I did not see him as in the edit as an incredible strategic threat. And this was her telling us this. She wasn't trying to convince anyone else. She was casting
Mm-hmm.
her vote. So it
Right.
was something she truly believed. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that goes back to the, I have to try to follow the with the MC component, where it was the vote that was going to be on him, and and I don't know if that was part of it as well, where Sophie thought that
Yeah.
she had come up with this plan, this idea, and then that completely was
Yeah, but she said
bamboozled.
today.
Wasn't,
She said
I know,
today I
and
realized.
that's true. So today, I don't know. I mean, that's very interesting, because I do think that, I mean, Sophie, I'm going to say it, Sophie had a choice, right? And she had to decide which side she wanted to go with.
Right.
And for some reason, she was she believes, and this is what she did tell us in one of the confessionals,
Hmm.
that keeping Savannah was a better idea for her, because
Yeah, well,
Savannah could be like a
yeah.
shield for her.
Right. Well,
And
I have
so,
thoughts on that when we get to Appendix A, but yeah.
and I'm sure that you do. And so I'm curious if she's, if, and I don't mean that in a bad way,
Yeah.
but I'm curious if she is looking at comparing Savannah and Jawan, and if we're looking at strategic gameplay of the two. If Jawan is as you've represented, and I do think that it's true that people liked him, but they also thought
Mhm.
he was a number of sorts, that that puts him in a better place in a strategic gameplay, and able to like argue his game, right? That, like, I didn't need all these tricks and these extra things. I didn't need immunity
Yeah.
necklaces or extra votes. It was me. It was coming from me and the relationships that I was making with all of you. Whereas Savannah is in a different type of position. And so I think maybe for Sophie, she's looking at it saying, okay, do I want to sit next to Savannah, who I could say I kind of held my own against on the physical component? or Jawan, where it's more of a strategic thing. I don't know if maybe that's what that
Yeah, I
meant, is that she's comparing the two.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was mulling this over on Blue Sky, and David B himself, not to be confused with David B myself, noted that there could have been a better perception among his tribe mates than the one given by the edit.
Sure.
He
Mm-hmm.
voted correctly each time, mostly because he and Sage were basically determining how those votes would go, which
Mm-hmm.
could make him look like a strategic threat as well as a social threat because of what I just talked about. So
Mm-hmm.
I I also wonder if, like, maybe Rizzo and Soph and Savannah, much like they talked up Alex as a threat to Jawan, maybe they talked up Jawan as a threat
Mm.
to Sophie with an E and said, "Look
Yeah.
at these things he's done," and that's what she means by realizing that. That's my best
That's
guess on that.
That's a good guess, considering we already know that Rizzo has an ability to do that and to spin things to people in a way that convinces them that it's true. So I'm curious if maybe that was part of it too, since she did specify today. So I'm wondering if
Yeah,
that did come down to a conversation, because we only saw kind of the latter half of the
right.
conversation between she and Savannah, and I think it was, I don't know if Rizzo was there, he might have been, but when she's like, they're flipping, they are flipping. So there had to have been like a lead up to that of some sort,
Mhm.
because they were all, it wasn't like she walked up to them and said, hey, oh my gosh, they're flipping. They were all sitting there conversing. So we didn't see the beginning of that conversation. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, as far as whether he really was that much of a threat, it appeared to me in watching the show that Sage was the one kind of directing where the two of them would go, or at least had
Mm-hmm.
greater than 50% input. But all the things we've talked about, that may have been an incorrect portrayal from the edit.
Yeah.
It seemed like we already mentioned this. Jawan was overruling what she wanted to do in terms of taking the shot against Rizzo. It's possible that, like I said, Sophie saw this, and that's part of what contributed to her seeing him as a threat who needed to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, the seventh rule covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And we previously discussed one reason that Jawan was on the outs in his original tribe was because of his obvious idol hunting.
Mm.
One detail about this was that he would go, quote, looking for firewood with his bag, or sometimes Savannah's bag, which we talked about. And Savannah immediately knew that meant he wanted to be able to find an idol and stuff it in there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
without interviews yet, we don't know if that really was his plan or he just innocently thought it was a better way to carry firewood, but I suspect she was right.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the situation. Now, can I'm certainly, this is not about Jawan, but it is about idols, because we did have Christina's idol that was a consideration, and I'm imagining you saw the secret scene and the post perhaps by Miss Sophie, Blue Sophie.
No.
Oh, okay, okay. So this is worth a mention here, because we
Now,
are
I heard
questioning.
that there was a Sophie post that may have been somewhat spoilery. So if it's that, don't.
No, it was a
Okay.
secret scene, and but it was, she went through Christina's bag
Oh
to
yeah,
try to
no, I saw
determine.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yes,
I
and
saw her
so
going through that. Yeah,
yeah, so I'm wondering how much of that played a role as well in their decision, as to, because there seemed to be like, you know, as to why they were targeting Jawan, and why they decided to do what they did, because they clearly at that point knew that Christina has what appears to be an idol, because she had the two string
right.
beads, not just the one. And so there is some other, game components that were part of this decision, which was inclusive of a confirmation that Christina had something. And so the Stephen vote didn't necessarily seem to be the best play, I think, at that point, because they knew if we're all targeting
Yeah,
Stephen, she might play it for Stephen, but she won't
yeah.
play it for
I
Jawan.
mean, that's an Appendix A thing, Jessica. But
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
but um, Yeah, I mean, I didn't see, like I said, I didn't see the post because it probably was posted on that evil place, unless it was in a video. She does a lot of videos on TikTok, so, but I don't catch all of them necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But, um, so, so yeah, I'll have more to say
Okay,
about
we
that in a
can
minute.
we
But
can wait. I'm so
yes,
sorry. I jumped
yes,
ahead. We were
um,
talking about idols and advantages. I thought perhaps I could talk about that here.
no, no,
But
you
anyway,
can't. Bad, bad. Um, in the now in the area of game mechanics. One thing we discussed with Sam last week was how it seems like nobody noticed Savannah didn't actually vote at the split tribal council.
mm-hmm,
When Jeff said that's 3, that's enough, they should have realized, and that
mm-hmm,
should have given them a clue that maybe she had something else going on, which takes us back to Sage and Jawan not adequately planning ahead for the unknown and waiting too long to go after Rizzo. If
mm-hmm.
they had noticed, they might have seen that waiting would be a really bad idea.
Yeah. Well, and I did. Somebody mentioned this that perhaps they thought that she walked up there and sometimes there's a little message like you don't get to vote, like you get to come and watch, but this is all a ruse, you don't get
Right,
to vote. But still, the math should have been mathed and they should have
right.
figured it out and made some determinations. And when you are at this number configuration,
Mm-hmm.
right, it becomes much more significant as to who votes for who and how many votes you actually have. And so any chance that someone has an extra vote is certainly going to throw a wrench in the works.
Right.
And so, yeah, the math should have been figured out
I mean, and it,
previously.
it didn't even have to be an extra vote. Even if they said, even if it was the situation you said where she didn't really get to vote, she just got
Hmm.
to come and talk to them, she still lied directly to them,
Sure.
which should be an indicator you cannot trust her or Rizzo. So stop
Yeah.
doing that, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
and it, even if it wasn't an extra vote, it could have been an idol. It could have been some other
Hmm.
advantage.
Hmm.
You don't know. The problem is the unknown.
Yeah.
Get rid of this alliance before they can use whatever unknown thing that is against you.
100%. Yeah.
So, and then although we mentioned it earlier, I do want to again bring up Jawan rigging the rock draw against Jason here because it was a great example of using game mechanics to your advantage. He set it up to ensure Jason wouldn't be the one going on the journey and possibly getting an advantage, and Jason was never the wiser.
Now, rigging a rock draw if only.
Yes, yes.
Mm, painful.
All right. Well, Appendix A
Oh, okay. Here we
discusses
go. I've already
discusses
talked about it.
discusses players keeping their end goals in mind when voting, and we talk about voting out the weak then the strong, then the weak then the strong. And as we've said for the past couple weeks, at this portion of the game, you typically want to get out someone who is strong on the opposing side. Of
Mm,
course, Rizzo said everyone there is a threat, so that would mean all of them. But I disagree because, like, I'm sorry, I like Christina. I don't see her as a threat to win the game. As just one example that comes to
yeah.
mind.
Hmm.
Um, in any case, I think this goes, but of course, Rizzo wasn't going to say that in the game.
Sure.
Almost everyone here is a threat, except for you, Christina. That's a good way to get on
Right.
someone's,
Right.
positive side.
Hmm.
In any case, I think this goes back to what I mentioned in the second rule about Rizzo wanting to take out anyone he sees as being in a better position than he is. In other words, a
Hmm.
strong opponent. And even though Sophie theoretically was the one who chose the name, Sophie with an E, it made sense for all of that group because they knew Christina had an idol and there was a possibility she'd play it on Steven. So,
Hmm.
much like the move against Nate, it made sense to go for someone who the idol would definitely not be played on. Now,
Yes.
that was not the only reason they decided on Jawan, but it was a good reason. Like, Christina was either going to play it on herself or Steven.
Hmm.
There was no world in which she was playing it on Jawan
Right.
unless Sophie was a double agent and, walked it back to them and told them
Right.
specifically, look, they told me they're voting for you, Jawan.
Right. But now, who told them that Christina had the idol, though? I mean, I know Sage was telling
Sage told
Steven.
Sophie with an E.
Oh, and she did tell Sophie with an E. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even without that bag search, and this was why the bag search was a secret scene, they didn't need it because the
Mm-hmm.
information they had was pretty strong. I mean, Sage said it in a way like, I'm pretty sure, I have a strong feeling. And, that turned into, yes, she has one. So,
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. Stop telling people things, okay? Like I am so proud of Blue Sophie because she has not told
yes.
even her closest allies what she has. She is holding on to that on her own. And she even gave us a little nugget. She goes, if only I could take it. She
Yeah.
even said it out loud, but it was like a little tease. This is when, knowledge is power. And if you're the only one who knows it, then nobody can use it against you and nobody can run around. And there's this whole like, you can't tell anybody because I'm not supposed to tell anyone. Guess what? There's that old saying about three people can keep a secret if two of them are dead, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't like, and you're playing survivor. Like that's not happening. If you were telling one person, the reason for telling them better be like, I have to save my game in this moment. And that's why I have to share this information with you because otherwise I'm a dead man walking. So
Yeah.
this is the time I'm going to share this information. But if you don't have to share it, don't share it. And I feel
Yeah.
like this season people are just sharing and there isn't that reason to share anything with certain people in the moments they're being shared.
Yeah. I think the problem here was, which maybe we'll discuss more next week. The problem here was Sage was trying to do too many things at once.
Mm,
One, she trusted Sophie with an E way more than she had any reason to believe she should.
mm-hmm.
And two, she I think she mostly said it because she wanted them to get Christina to play it
Right.
so that idol would be out of the game.
Right. She wanted
Look,
to flush the
focus on getting
door.
the person out that you want out.
Right.
You
Pick
don't
one
need
thing.
three different things to happen at this tribal council. If
Yes.
anything else happens, it's a bonus. But you're spreading yourself too thin trying to do all these things at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she even talked about that there
Right.
was so many things that she was hoping came out of this tribal council. No, the biggest thing that should have come out of this tribal council is Savannah or Rizzo end up getting voted out, and
Right.
that Rizzo's idol. I mean, if you want something extra, Rizzo's idol gets played. Like that's
Right.
and but these are things that existed two tribals ago, last tribal. Like,
Yeah.
and it's still the same. It's the same story, and it's just a different day. And it's really unfortunate that I don't. I mean, at this point, I think
Yeah.
it's kind of determined
Yeah.
what things are going to
Possibly.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned, of course, that the group left the decision up to Sophie with an E, which was a smart move on their part to make her feel like she had an actual say in things with them. Like we've
Mm,
seen this before. If you are trying to get someone in new and you're like, we're voting for this person, it's not going to
right.
work. The
Right.
way to loop them in is to say, who do you want to vote for?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, and of course, this was Blue Sophie's idea as far as we saw. And even though Savannah thought Sage was a bigger threat, Sophie wanted it to be Jawan. And of course, did Savannah really think Jawan was or Sage was a bigger threat? Probably because she actually wanted to do something that wasn't voting out Jawan. So, here
Mm,
is one person who doesn't think Jawan was the bigger threat, and yet Sophie with an E was convinced he was. Anyway, as I mentioned in Rule 6, Sophie said, Jawan is a good player. He's extremely likable. I don't think I want to sit with him at the end. But of course, before she even got to that point, she was in the middle of the two groups and had to decide which to go with.
mm-hmm.
She really opened up in terms of going into gamer mode. Now, maybe she's been this way the whole time, but she's been purpled a lot in the edit for
Yeah.
much of the time. But she told
Mm-hmm.
us this is a game for $1 million. Be ruthless, be strategic, and make nice when you're a millionaire back home. I endorse this message.
Yes, me too. Very much so. I think that sums it up nicely. And this is why I think people need to remember that everyone is playing their own game, but in order to play the game, you have to play with the people around you. And so
Right.
I do feel like Sophie with an E, her goals are different than someone like Jawan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why she's in this decision and this choice that she has to make. She's weighing what's going to be best, what she thinks for her own game, even though we might be looking at it and going, oh my gosh, what is she doing? but it's based on the edit. And these are the things that we're seeing as opposed to what she's feeling and experiencing and being told by the people around her during the game.
I mean, I do think she made the right decision for herself.
Yeah.
As I said in Rule 1, we don't know for sure why she made this choice, but we could look at some of the factors involved. She
Hmm.
decided to go with a foursome rather than a group of 5. So that
Hmm.
puts her in a better position, especially with Final Four fire making. If they
Yep.
say solid, we've talked about this for several seasons now. You only need a Final Four,
Hmm.
because then what happens? You worry about it at fire making.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, she probably and rightfully doesn't feel she can trust Steven and Christina after they showed their cards with their surprised at the MC vote result.
Yes. Yes.
And
Hmm.
and so that in particular is a big reason I don't understand why Sage was so sure Sophie was with her. Clearly, Sophie is doing some seriously good acting here.
Yes. Oh, yes. She must be because it does leave us scratching our heads for sure.
Yeah. Now, a couple other reasons that factored in, I believe, is that Sophie brought up something you already mentioned, that she wants to keep Savannah as a challenge shield.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I know I just heavily complimented Sophie, but this is silly. She has as many immunity challenge wins as Savannah does. She came in second to Savannah in Savannah's 2 wins. Plus, she was already thought to be a challenge threat before the merge. If
Mm-hmm.
someone is going to look to eliminate a player just because of challenges, she is the more likely target than Savannah. She is Savannah's challenge shield, not the other way around.
Yes, and I don't disagree with that. And I do think that because we've already seen that whole discussion had as to why she was being targeted was because she is a
Right.
challenge beast and because she's doing so great in challenges. So yeah, it is definitely to Savannah's help, if you will, and to have Sophie stick around because Savannah's probably looking at it the same way that she is going
Right.
to she's going to be my meat shield that I need. So yeah, I mean, I know it's a term that we've often utilized for other players in this game, but I do think that both of those women are doing incredibly at the challenges, and they are both finishing either first or second. And so, yeah, it's certainly to Savannah's benefit to keep Sophie so that way
Yeah.
she doesn't become the target.
Right. But, I think that Sophie, although I agree with her decision on who to go with, this I think was a bad reason. This was the
Mm-hmm.
wrong reason for it. Now,
Yeah.
Sophie also brought up to us that Jawan and Sage have been calling the shots and it's time for her to take control. She can't really do that if she's working with them. So she needs to get rid of them. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm still not sure how much shot calling and control she'll be able to exercise going forward when she's the 4th member of a 4-person alliance. But like I said, at least for now, they were letting her get her way. So makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, Appendix B discusses the jury phase. On the one hand, I don't think this move was specifically made to put Jawan on the jury for motives other than those we've already discussed. But on the other hand, with his reaction, he isn't going there mad, and indeed seems willing to give credit to whomever
Mm-hmm.
out of this group can claim it at the end. And he could have some sway with the other jurors in that regard as well if he gives those people points for getting him out, and then it could encourage other jurors to give them points as well.
Yeah.
If they had voted
Yeah.
out Sage, I'm not sure she would have handled it in quite the same way.
No, I don't think so. I,
Yeah.
I don't think Sage is going to be a happy juror.
No.
I don't think so at all. But I do think Jawan is going to want to give credit. I anticipate that Jawan's question from the jury will be about himself
Yeah.
and why he needed to be targeted. I just anticipate that being the feel of the question that he's going to pose.
Okay. Well, we'll see. All right. Well, it is about time to wrap things up. So, what are your final thoughts on Jawan?
So, 3 boys on a bench is no longer. It's now 2 boys on a bench. So, we won't have any more musical notes from Jawan relative to the lovely music they were trying to
It is
provide
a
to us.
huge loss to the music world.
Huge, huge loss. But I do feel for Jawan, because I do think that Jawan came into this game really believing that he was going to be a great Survivor player. He had a lot of positivity about himself. He described himself as friendly and fearless. And so I do think that coming into this game and having those components of yourself and feeling that you are going to be able to represent those is a key component to being a great Survivor player. But I do think that there is part of Jawan that got a little too comfortable, because I feel like Jawan was being mm, built up a bit. I really do have to blame a lot of this on Rizzo, because I do think Rizzo is doing a great job of making Jawan feel that he's in a better place than he is, making Jawan feel that he is more in control than he actually is. And I love the point that you made about Sophie and that final her voting statements that she made about learning today that he was so strategic. And so I do think that Rizzo had something to do with that. Jawan definitely knew that he wanted to play this game. He wanted someone to play the game with, and he had Sage. He did build relationships he needed, but unfortunately, I do think he just lost sight of how everyone around him was doing the same thing. And when everyone around you is doing the same thing, you have to be aware of that ripple effect and how something you do can certainly affect what the next person is going to do. Sharing secrets, talking about what someone told you, spilling the beans, if you will, all of these things can negatively affect the game that you want to play as soon as others find out. And for Jawan, this just seems to be a season of let's share. Let's tell everybody everything we know all of the time, unless your name is Sophie without an E. So, Jawan, I give you props for coming into this game, wanting to play fearless and trying to do so. I'm sorry, but your winner pick is now gone, David Bloomberg. And so I have to just say that one more time. But I understand why he was your winner pick, because he certainly had all of the capabilities to get there. So, Jawan, I think you really just got outplayed by the people around you who are certainly taking advantage of your friendly nature and how they approach this game and the information that they're sharing with you. Oh no, you're muted. We can't even hear you crying.
I didn't want to accidentally make noise over you. Yes, I was just saying, Jawan, my pregame winner pick. I didn't want people to hear me sobbing. That was the real reason.
Oh, it's so sad.
Yeah, I had fun watching him play because he clearly had fun playing. Though, as
Yes.
I mentioned earlier, his game was something of a roller coaster ride with highs and lows in his position. At the end, as I mentioned, Jawan told Sage when he was saying goodbye, we tried and we made the wrong decision. And that's true, just not for the decision he was talking about. It was the previous two when they had the opportunity to vote out Rizzo. Twice they didn't do it and voted out their own numbers instead. We saw it coming, and we even spent a fair amount of time last week talking about how it could come back to bite them because they seemed to think they had plenty of time when they really didn't. MC was not the threat. Alex was not the threat. Rizzo was the threat, but they decided to try to work with him at those points instead. I suspect it was at least partially due to Jawan's friendly relationship with Rizzo. And if that's the case, it was a clear situation where he needed to put that aside and take a more objective look at the overall game board. If it was due to other reasons and they had a grand plan, then they didn't take into consideration all of the moving parts that they needed to for that plan. Again, as we discussed last week, there is uncertainty in the game of Survivor, both in exactly how relationships line up and also in what trinkets players may have that you don't know about, in addition to the ones you do. But Jawan seemed to think he was in prime position no matter what, which, unfortunately for him, was not the case. Jawan worked hard to put himself in the right positions, but people kept turning on him. His supposed allies in his original tribe to start with, and then Sophie with an E, along with those very same people at the end. Other people saw how hard he was working, and that worried them. Plus, on top of that, he was one of the most likable people there, unless your name was Savannah, and that was a different story. It all came down to Sophie's choice, which was not an actual Sophie's choice, but because it was a matter of which option was best for her, not two horrible options.
Mm.
So for one of those options, it was indeed the worst possible outcome for Jawan, and that's the one she went with. Jawan just appeared to be too much of a threat for her liking, which agreed with Rizzo's thoughts as well. And Jawan allowed that to happen by waiting too long to make a move against that group. And that is why Jawan lost.
There we are.
There we are. All right. Well, before we move on to our predictions, I want to let everyone know that next week we will be back to our regular time, and we will have Omer Zahir joining us once again, and fresh off of the Traders Canada. So he will not talk Traders Canada with us, but he now has played that game as well, in addition to Survivor. So maybe that will give him even more insight. He already had a lot of insights, but
I know
perhaps
he's so
even more.
enjoyable. He's so
Yes.
enjoyable. It's going to be very exciting to have him join us for sure.
Yes. And we want to remind everyone that the rules we just discussed, and I mean it this time, unlike the first time I said it, are available in a shorter, more colorful version in poster form and in t-shirt form and in checklist t-shirt form. So go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed to find all of that.
Yes.
And now it's on you.
Oh, it's on me? Oh, okay. So are we going to talk about where they can find us? Is that what we're doing now?
That would be the thing we talk about next.
I know I always forget like the transition right there. You have to forgive me. My dogs are distracting me just a smidge right now. But you can certainly find me at Jessica Lewis 89 on Blue Sky, and also on that other thing that used to be called Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Jessica Lewis 6789. But my social media is nothing as it used to be, and nothing compared to the guy who sits next to me, David Bloomberg, who has a link tree that allows you to find all of his social media content very easily. So David Bloomberg, why don't you tell them all about your link tree?
So that is at linktree/David Bloomberg. You can find all of my various accounts there. You could find me directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, not David B himself. That's a different person who I also talk to on Blue Sky. And I encourage everyone to join in those conversations there. Also, of course, I am on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV, where I've been posting around 2 or 3 reality TV short videos every day. Holidays, it was down to one. The holiday Thanksgiving weekend was down to 1, but it'll be back up shortly. And most of them are, of course, about Survivor 49, plus some from the Traders Canada Season 3. And I'm co-hosting the Tradar podcast for the Traders Canada each week. That's TRAIDAR. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. So, I was talking about Omer Zahir on that podcast as well. All right. Now we can do predictions. And the preview tells us Soph claims to Sage that she wants to turn on Savannah and Rizzo. I'll believe it when I see it. She does still have her secret knowledge is power, and Rizzo still has his not so secret idol. So I guess if she really wanted to make a splash, she could do that now and take his idol and help vote him out. It would be really fun to see. I just don't think it's going to happen yet. I don't think so. Meanwhile, Sage is very upset at other Sophie for the huge smile she had on her face while turning against Sage and Jawan. And Sophie says she's not going to apologize for that. Sage says, when you piss her off, you go home. Do you, though? Because I can't imagine Sophie's newfound allies suddenly flipping against her, unless, again, it is your Sophie. But if she does that, she's obviously going to vote out Rizzo. Why would she take someone's idol and then keep that person in the game? It wouldn't make sense. So I do not see Sophie with an E going out in any way, shape, or form. I'm afraid it will be the more obvious target, Sage. It would only make sense to vote her out since she was Jawan's partner in crime and she was trying to get rid of Savannah, and we know how Savannah feels about that. So I'm afraid it's going to be the obvious.
Yeah, I have to go with the obvious as well because she just doesn't have the backing that she needs to pull anything off. And I think when you just start looking at the numbers, do I think it would be a beautiful thing for Sophie without an E to steal Rizzo's idol and then vote him out? Yes, that would be incredible. But now I don't think is the appropriate moment to do that because she just the momentum for that to happen doesn't need to happen yet because you do have Sage. You have what is technically the easy vote, right? And the easy
Right.
vote is to vote out Sage, as opposed to trying to coordinate something and somebody sharing that information because we've seen what Sophie with an E does do, and she shares information. And so if Sophie without an E decides to try to gain some followers and momentum for that to happen, it's not going to bode well for her considering what we know about Sophie with an E wanting to keep particular people around in order to protect herself. So I unfortunately agree that I think we are losing Sage.
All right. Well, we will see if
Hmm.
my predictions in particular are any better this time than they were last time. It couldn't be worse. As we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all of the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons, plus the Facebook groups and Discord. And of course, you support shows like ours and everything on the network by going to robhasawebsite.com/patron and signing up. Also, you can go to weknowsurvivor.com, like it says right down there, and subscribe to all the RHAP Survivor podcasts. You get, of course, us and the Know-It-Alls and the B&B and Survivor Global and more. Anything that's in the Survivor feed, you get it. So make sure you're subscribed if you aren't already.
And we would like to thank everyone at RHAP for all of the incredible content that you do create, not just the Why Blank Lost podcast, but all of the
But
content
mostly
that
the Why
you
Blank Lost podcast.
Mostly that, though. We really appreciate that so much. So thank you to Scott and Jess for the editing that you do. Thank you for the team that supports you and supports Why Blank Lost and all of the content that you are creating and editing. Thank you to Will from America for the theme song that you created for the Why Blank Lost podcast that you hear on the audio version. And David, it's been a long time since it was just you and I bantering about Survivor and why particular people lost. So this was a nice little change up for us. So it's been lovely as always.
A little holiday change up on things. You know, you eat differently at the holidays. You see different people at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
My mother
plus,
was very concerned. She was like, "Have you done the podcast?" Because she couldn't find it yet. I'm like, "No, Mom, we're doing that today." So she was very concerned. So, Mom,
okay.
here you go.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, of course, Jessica, for rushing home and jumping straight onto the podcast to accommodate my rather strange schedule today. And like we said, Omer will join us next week, and we will see you all then. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.